thanks everybody for being here. I guess initially, the initial idea was to really sort of investigate the possible tension and also maybe complicities of having an alternative writing space, an alternative thinking space, a critical and creative supporting community space within a larger market-driven university. And so I wanted to just give some contextualizing points that contextualize for me the things that I may or may not say. A few of the circumstances and context for these talks. Continued and increasing commercialization and ownership by the few of the many in all aspects of human existence and endeavor: water, seeds, healthcare, education, communication, recreation, emotions, romance, friendship. Saleability insinuates itself between and into every nook and cranny of life, planet, creature, plant. Continued and increasing disparity in wealth and resource distribution. Continued and increasing locales of genocide, matricide, queericide, and suicide. Continued and increasing pollution and toxification of the biosphere. Continued and increasing creation and militarization of international and also intranational conflict. Continued and increasing incarceration of people of color and the poverty-stricken. Continued and increasing reduction of education into utilitarian means for producing research for profit rather than engaged citizens prepared to take part in civic living. And that brings me to Penn. Here I have some of the reading that I've been doing and thinking about what role can pedagogy play in these continued and increasing disparities? Does teaching have its part to play? And thinking about what we might call, in the literary world, the radical teachers here, the innovative writing teachers. And is there a connection between that innovative writing and producing an engaged citizen prepared to take part in civic living? So here's a quote from Henry Giroux, who I mentioned him last time. He writes a lot on public pedagogy. You can find a lot of his work at truthout.org. Highly recommend him. Quote, increasingly education appears useful only to those who hold political and economic power, and issues regarding how the academy might contribute to the quality of democratic public life on a national and global level are either ignored or dismissed. On the right, neoliberal cheerleaders are pushing hard to turn the university into another outpost of corporate learning and training. On the left, education as a site of dialectical struggle, persuasion, and critical engagement is all too often reduced to ritual debunking and demystification, revealing the political logic of a debased capitalist system. But revelation guarantees nothing, and in this case substitutes a limited form of reportage for the hard pedagogical work connecting empowering forms of knowledge to the realities and social forms that bear down on students' everyday lives. That's referencing Freire. The collective struggle to widen the reach and quality of education as a basis for creating critical citizens, so alive in the 60s, is rendered defunct within the corporate drive for efficiency, downsizing profits, and an utterly instrumentalist notion of excellence. End quote. And particularly here at Penn, Penn pulls in tens of millions of dollars in football revenue. It also receives millions from Defense Department contracts and grants, ranking 6th among universities and colleges receiving funds for military research, not to mention pharma research, biomedical investments. And so we come to the Kelly Writers House within the larger Penn. And some of this may be a little bit repeating some of the context from the last talk. My apologies. Maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to remember what I actually said. This is from the mission statement of the Kelly Writers House. The Writers House, as we have envisioned it, is a place where students of the University of Penn may engage in self-directed, interactive learning, which sounds very different than research for profit. Its main purpose is to provide a supportive and accessible atmosphere where Penn writers of all kinds can share their works and ideas and enhance their writing skills together. Largely have found that to be true. So that's some of the context. So now I'm going to read some of my really rough, just incipient thoughts, continuing to think around politics and writing and institutions and innovative literature versus in proximity to political action.
Well, I want to back up for a second to a couple things that you said earlier that are probably broader than that last question that you just asked. And you started out talking about essentially the increasing commercialization of everything, and then also in this context, obviously, particularly the university, and that's obviously true, and that's obviously a problem, just because the way that the university gets run affects how the classroom gets run, whether we like that or not. But I want to say that sort of on the one hand, I'm sort of as a respondent or a correspondent here, the kind of maybe it's going to be a little bit Pollyanna-ish about Kelly Writer's House, actually. No, I am, because Kelly Writer's House opened when I was a graduate student at Temple, and it was this really sort of utopian kind of amazing thing. Like, we just could not believe it, you know what I mean? And I bring students, undergraduate students here pretty much every semester to at least one event, and usually more. And my students are amazed by Kelly Writer's House, by what happens here, by who is here, by how things happen here. And so I will perhaps take on the role of this sort of great cheerleader and of Kelly Writer's House, because places like this don't exist in a lot of places at all, but certainly in a lot of universities. But you were asking about whether the university prepares a person for civic engagement. I think that's such an important question to ask, and specifically the connection between innovative writing and an engaged citizen. And I think that is a really important question to ask. I perhaps obviously think yes, that it does. I was reading your piece on the Best American Poetry blog that you're talking about poems that urge action beyond the reception of the poem. And I was thinking about that specifically in the context of teaching, and that to me in the classroom, that they think about it afterward is essentially action beyond the poem, right? And so maybe my hopes are very sort of small and practical to start with, but that would be my answer to that question. And you were talking about how is sometimes is this an excuse or a way to spend time reading and things like that, and of course this current political climate and whether college degrees or to go to college is elitist and things like that. All of these questions are important and happening on a lot of different levels. And I think that education in general obviously is useful. I also think that innovative writing is also very useful. I'm not sure if it is automatically political anymore. I don't know the answer to that question. I would have the tendency to say yes, again, from the position of a teacher. I think that it is, because it's a manner of thinking and of writing and reading that is really different, and so they're treating language really differently. So within the classroom, again, I would say that yes, that it can be. But you were talking about like the outpost, which is innovative writing within the outpost, right, of literature in general. And so I think that the classroom that is teaching innovative writing is again this kind of outpost within an outpost within an outpost. And maybe I start getting kind of tunnel vision or what do they call it, stovepiping, whatever. So I don't know, but really.